everyone, and welcome to this week's Tea Around the World. My name is April.
And my name is Robin.
And today we are going to be talking about herbal and iced teas. So, for us to start off with, let's talk about something that we all are pretty familiar with, iced tea. Iced tea, whether it's sweetened or unsweetened, has been a staple of many states for quite some time.
Is it common to entertain guests with tea?
Yes, depending on the customs that you were brought up with and your personal preferences, iced tea has been a key element for entertaining guests at parties and get-togethers. So, when we talk about tea, we tend to see that typical rich golden liquid in a sweating glass of iced tea.
So do you buy it or do you make it yourself?
Well, technically you can do either. When you buy pre-made iced tea from the store, you get so many options that it can be very convenient, but it can also be very overwhelming and it can tend to get kind of costly. For today's episode, however, we will be focusing on how to brew your own iced tea at home. There are many different types of tea, whether they're served hot or cold. And they also tend to have different qualities that you can consider when you enjoy them. Some of them would include taste, aroma, texture, and the sweetener that you use.
Okay, some of these words I've never heard used when talking about tea. Can you tell me more?
Sure. The first one that we want to talk about is taste. Taste of a tea is much like wine. You can actually have a flavor that ranges from full to pungent, and from light to delicate flavors. For most teas, they can be kind of bitter. However, depending on a number of factors like oxidation and aging, teas can vary in their taste widely. Another aspect of it is the aroma. The aroma can have very distinct kind of smells as you bring the tea up to your mouth. The thing with the scent is it depends on the tea. Black teas, for example, tend to have a more smoky, leathery, fruity, floral type smell, whereas green teas, they actually tend to be more grassy. They can be floral as well, but some of them can also have a marine scent, where they kind of smell like seaweed. As for the other type of tea that we really like to mention today with iced teas is white tea. It is a more subtle aroma and taste. So it depends entirely on the tea for that. Another aspect is texture. So texture is kind of that how you feel as you're sipping it and that aftertaste that kind of flows and dissipates. Usually what happens is it kind of lingers on your palate and it can get kind of creamy, or it can be smoky, or it can just have a dryness that it leaves, depending on which type of tea you use. Another aspect, which is very common in iced teas, is the sweetener. The sweetener is actually very wide, depending on who you are and what you like. Granulated sugar, it can be a little difficult to dissolve into iced tea, especially if it's not hot. Hot tea, it's easier, but cold brew, you tend to want to go with something more like a syrup, a flavored syrup, or it could just be honey, agave syrup, artificial sweeteners, or other things that anybody can come up with. Okay, now that we have all gone through a sort of tea 101, I would like to mention some of the different types of tea that we actually use while brewing.
But April, aren't all iced teas the same, just sweetened or unsweetened?
Actually, they're not. You do have the sweetened versus unsweetened, but there are many different types of tea. Some of the more common ones that we have here today are black tea, green tea, and white tea. So black tea, for example, is more oxidated while it's created. It helps build up that earthy, smoky flavor that we love so much with black tea. The next type is green tea. Green tea itself is made from the same tree or small bush as black tea, but it does not undergo the same withering and oxidation as the other black teas and even oolong tea. And the last kind of tea that we like to mention, especially with herbal mixing teas, is the white tea. The white tea itself tends to be a softer, smoother experience, and it kind of blends a lot better because it is actually made with the buds or new growth of the same plant. So the other thing that we have here today is herbal teas. Herbal teas are beverages that are made from an infusion of herbs, spices, or other plant material in hot water. The term herbal teas is often used in contrast with true teas, which are prepared from cured leaves of the same tree or small shrub. Some of these different types of herbal teas are lavender, chamomile, ginger, passion, the African rooibos, lemongrass, rosemary, cilantro, turmeric, lemon balm, fennel, mint, hibiscus, and many, many more. A fun fact about herbal teas is that they have been used and reported to have medical uses. Each tea has different symptoms that it tends to alleviate or deal with. For example, chamomile tea, it's actually a very relaxing tea. It's supposed to help if you can't sleep, but it also helps alleviate headaches. Ginger tea is actually meant to help with stomach aches. So like if you get that upset tummy a little bit and you're just kind of getting between meals, it's probably a good idea to have a small cup. Lavender tea is another popular one. It is a very relaxing tea. It's even been put into lavender oils to help people get to sleep, and it helps them relax.
So how do you make it? How long does it keep?
Well, there are two different ways that you can actually make iced tea itself. There's the hot brew, and then there's the cold brew. The hot brew itself is where you steep the tea leaves or a tea bag in hot water for a short amount of time. And once it has brewed, you remove the leaves, strain it, or however you wish to do it, and you refrigerate it, or you can cool it with a cup of iced water. The cold brew is actually where you steep the tea leaves or the tea bags in cold water for possibly 12 hours or at least overnight.
Interesting. So would you say that loose leaf is better to brew with or tea bags?
That would be a personal preference, I would think. Tea bags can often have a less complex flavor than actual full tea leaves because a tea bag is actually made up of what is called tea dust or fannings. These are actually the leftover dregs of when a full tea leaf is actually strained and grated and then put in the bags. The reason that it has the less complex flavor is because the essential oils and all of the flavorful juices that are inside the leaf, since they're so cut up, there's not a lot of the oil left because the air gets into the tea leaves.
So how would you brew iced tea for a large party?
Well, actually, the best way to brew that would be in a concentrate. So a concentrate is actually where you brew the tea in a ratio of 1-3. That simply means you have the same amount of tea bags, but half the water. And that way, when you serve it later, you can actually pour it over a iced cup, and the dilution as the ice melts will mix with the tea and make it less strong. Some of the actual examples that we have of pretty common teas are the traditional Southern iced tea, the one that's actually really sweet. And then the other one is the Arnold Palmer. That is actually made up of 1/3 lemonade and tea.
So what are these teas in front of us?
Well, actually, we have 6 different types of tea today. We have it divided on the table based off of the true teas, which are in front of Robin, and the herbal teas, which are here in front of me. Our first tea is actually a white tea mixed with pomegranate juice. Our second tea is a green tea. And our third is a black tea called Earl Grey. Starting over here, we have chamomile, passion fruit, or just passion, and the African rooibos.
So how are these teas made?
These teas were actually made using the process of a cold brew. To achieve this, we actually put the tea bags in the cold water and let it steep either overnight or for 12 hours. Usually, they keep for 4 days if you keep it in the refrigerator, or 1 day if you leave it on the counter. For these specifically, though, we used 2 tea bags and 16 ounces of water to fill their jars.
So how can you dress it up or change the recipe?
Well, actually, there's a couple different ways that we can do it. The first would be to actually mix the teas themselves. So we could mix a green tea with a white tea or some other variation. Another method would be to add fruit. So, for example, we could add raspberry and basil to a tea, like black tea, or we could add cucumbers and lime to a green tea. Another would be adding flavored syrups, or as we like to call them, simple syrups, like Robin has in our lovely little jar. Another example would be to purchase tea bags that are pre-mixed, which you can find at any grocery store. And the other way would be to mix it with fruit juice. An example of one of these would be the Arnold Palmer, which is made with 1/3 lemonade and the rest tea, which I would love to make for you today. Do you actually have a preference for your tea?
Yes, let's use black tea because that's traditional.
Okay, great. All right, so if you'll grab the lemonade for me right there and pour about 1/3 of the cup full of lemonade. Perfect. Now we just need the black tea.
All right.
Okay, and fill it to your heart's desire. All right. Now, the other thing we could do with this Arnold Palmer is add the syrup. If you would like to add syrup, you can. If you don't have to.
Yes, let's try it.
Okay, look at that pretty color. And go ahead and give it a stir and a taste. Yeah.
Refreshing.
Well, thank you for joining us today, everybody, and talking about iced and herbal teas with us. We hope you enjoyed and learned something along with us, and maybe even found some new methods that you might like to try. I do want to extend a challenge to everybody at home that the next time you drink a wonderful, whether it be hot or iced tea, try to mix it up a little bit. Try and make a syrup. Try to mix the teas, or find some other kind of infusion that you love. If you want to learn more about iced tea, or the simplicity of herbal teas, or simply how to make different varieties of our simple syrup, whether it be raspberries, lemongrass, or even ginger, you can do anything you like. If you have questions or anything else, please check the links below, and we can answer your questions on our next time. So, until next time, grab a glass of iced tea, and y'all come back next week for jasmine tea, and we will learn all about how to brew it, drink it, and celebrate with it. Have a nice day, y'all.